Warning, this podcast may be disturbing to some listeners. Due to the graphic nature, listener discretion is advised. Welcome from wherever you are. This is the Demon Inside podcast. I am your host, John Benham. If you would like to review another episode of the Demon Inside, you can go to Spotify, Apple Music, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and any podcast platform. And please, don't forget to subscribe and rate us with 5 stars. A new episode will come out once a week. We will be right back after a word from our sponsors. And welcome back to the Demon Inside.
New at 5:30, day 3 of testimony at the trial of the Upper West Side nanny accused of brutally stabbing 2 children in her care. Today, more gut-wrenching testimony as jurors heard from first responders and others who heard the mother's anguished calls for help. Eyewitness News reporter Danielle Lee in court today. She's joining us now from Lower Manhattan with more. Danielle?
Diana, witnesses repeatedly used the words evil and horrifying to describe what they saw that evening, October 25th, 2012. And while the descriptions of 2 young children nearly decapitated are hard enough to bear, for the first time today, jurors saw crime scene photos of that carnage. Building Superintendent Michael Minahan at times struggled to speak, describing the slaughter in the Upper West Side apartment complex where he worked. "I just saw red," he said, recalling rushing to a second-floor apartment in response to a mother's cries for help. Police say Marina Krim arrived home with her 3-year-old daughter to discover the family nanny, Yosoline Ortega, had slit the throats of her 2 other children, ages 2 and 6. Then they say Ortega turned the knife on herself. Of Ortega, the super said, "I opened the door and I see someone staring with the eyes of the devil right in my face." One of the first officers to respond to 911 calls, Detective Bradley Gore, remembered the super meeting him at the door and saying whatever is in there is evil. Gore says he saw the children in a bathroom tub and Ortega on the floor, struggling to breathe, a knife by her side and another in the sink. Much of the bathroom soaked in blood. Jurors fought back tears and covered their eyes as the prosecution showed photos of that terrible scene. One paramedic remembered, "It was probably the most horrendous scene I have ever seen." Defense attorneys are using an insanity defense, but prosecutors say that Ortega was jealous of the kid's mom and that she committed these heinous crimes because she was upset about her pay and hours.
Hello, my Demon Insiders, and welcome back to the Demon Inside. I'm your host, John Benham, and today we are doing the Demon Inside, Yosoline Ortega. And I believe that this lady was actually possessed. But before we start that, let's give a little background on who she is. So, Yoseline Ortega was born May 1st, 1962 in the Dominican Republic, and she was the second youngest of 8 siblings. Her parents owned a bodega, and she started working there when she was 7 years old, along with the rest of her family. As she got older, when she was 16, she had a horrible experience. Her sister, who was 12 years old, and she was the youngest, she passed away from a brain aneurysm. And Yoseline became very depressed to the point where she stayed indoors for a year. Now, here's the thing with me. If you're indoors and you're depressed about a loved one who has passed over, a lot of people start praying that they would like to hear her voice or see her one more time or be able to reach out to her. I'm thinking somewhere during that time she did that, because after that incident, She started to see demons. She started to see shadow people. When she started hearing and seeing the shadow people and demons, that she says, they would talk to her and tell her that she needed to hurt other people or hurt herself. She goes to the psychologist about the depression. They give her medicine, but she never tells them about the hallucinations or the voices. She says the voices get so loud that she would wake up in the middle of the night. She says they weren't coming from her head, they were coming from an outside source. But yet nobody ever heard them. She only talked about it to like certain few family members that she trusted. But she continued her life, and in 1985, she actually graduated from the university and got a degree in accounting while she was in the Dominican Republic. She moved to New York, where one of her sisters was living now, and in 1995, she got married, and she had a son whose name was Jesus, or Jesus. She ended up breaking up with the husband, and they got a divorce in 1999, and she moved back to the Dominican Republic with her son to raise him. So she decides that she needs more money, so she has to come back to the United States, but she leaves her son there with one of her sisters to take care of. In 2008, she decides to move back to the Dominican Republic to be with her son and help raise him. But in April of 2008, one of her friends shoots himself in the head in her family's balcony of her childhood home. This really messes with her because she gets into this depressive stage again, and she starts getting paranoid about crimes happening. And her son says that at that time she was very scared of violent crimes coming into her house. As a matter of fact, she wouldn't leave the house, and she wouldn't let him leave the house unless he was going to school. And at night, whenever the dogs would bark, she would hide him under the bed because she was afraid that criminals were going to come in. Now, here's the thing. When she would walk out of the house, she said she heard voices commanding her to go back inside. Because of these reasons, one of her sisters takes control and begins to raise her son as a caretaker, and Yoseline returns to the United States. So Yoseline comes to the United States and gets a job as a nanny with a family who had 3 kids. And Yoseline was doing a great job. The parents loved her. She treated the kids as if they were her own. She always told people she had 4 kids, which was the 3 she was taking care of and her own son. She was a happy-go-lucky person. But in the second year of working there, she started having financial problems. This is when her son came to live with her in New York. She had to go and find an apartment for him and her, and the cost of living was too much, and they had to move back in with her family. And by this time, the apartment that the family had, there was other people living there, her sisters, their families. So we're talking about 8 adults and children in a small apartment in New York. Plus, he wasn't able to go to public school because they wanted to hold him back a grade. So she paid for a Catholic school, private school, and it cost her a lot of money. Now, here's the problem, is that she's starting to feel the stress of not having enough money. So she goes to the family and asks them basically if she could have more money for the job that she's doing. Now they tell her, hey, look, we can't give you more money, but if you work more hours, we can pay you more. So she does. and she's cleaning the house and things like that. But then she starts complaining, saying that she's only the babysitter and they should give her more money, like a raise or something. But at that point, which was closer to the time that the incident happened, which was probably 6 months before, the couple was kind of hesitant about keeping her around because they were saying that she wasn't as good as she was when she first started. So could this have been demonic oppression? Yes. Demonic oppression has severe financial or employment problems, depression, anxiety, illness. I mean, anything to take a person out of commission. Yoseline starts getting angry about this. And this is the police talking about why she did what she did, because they believed that she was doing it for revenge. But Yoseline was changing. Everybody was seeing a change in her. To her friends and family that were close to Yoseline, they said that she was not acting like herself. She was not eating anymore. She was losing weight. She looked very old for her age. She would cry frequently. She was no longer this happy-go-lucky person. She was this woman who was very sad, like she wasn't there anymore. She couldn't sleep anymore. She had insomnia. She began to speak cryptically about shadow figures and voices who were trying to divide her family. And she was even saying that she was losing her mind to demonic possession. Now this is Yoseline. She's saying that she was losing her mind to demonic possession. So in her room, she would see shadowy figures of people running around the room, saying things like they were going to cut her throat and that they were going to get her. She spends almost all of her free time in this room. And her sister can hear her praying constantly, asking God to take away the things that she was feeling in her body and thinking in her mind. So because of the way she's feeling, she goes to a psychiatrist to get help. But she doesn't talk about her voices in her head. What she talks about is all the stress from work, that she's working too much, not getting enough pay. She has to live with her sister and the family in a small little apartment, and she can't provide for her son. And so on the morning of October 25th, Jesus goes to school, and Yoseline confirms that he made it because he sends her a text after the bus picks him up. Okay, so that's probably the last text she receives. Anyway, Yoseline leaves the house and hangs a purse on the door of her sister's room. The purse contains, listen to this, family heirlooms, pictures of their deceased mother and her mother's passport, social security card, a chain belonging to her mother alongside a broken ring and earring, Jesus's baby teeth with pictures of him as a baby, as well as photos of her and her sisters, all as children. And she goes to the neighbor and she tells the neighbor and gives her an envelope addressed to her sister. Inside is her debit card, her license, 2 insurance cards, her passport, social security card, and a blood donor card, bank papers, and $100. So the neighbor says this when police talked to her. They said that Yoseline also talked about a black shadow that was stalking her. The neighbor said that Yoseline spoke to her while she was like mashing her teeth, and her eyes were frantically darting from one side to the other. She was constantly pacing back and forth. And the communication is described as if one was speaking to a demon. That's what Yoseline looked like to the neighbor. She gets to work. She gets the 2-year-old from the house. She picks up the little girl from school. They don't go to the dance class. They go to the Central Park. The mom leaves the house at 4 p.m. with her other daughter. And Yoseline can be seen on CCTV footage just before 4 p.m. returning to the apartment with the two kids. As she enters the building, she asks the doorman, "Is the mother home?" The doorman responds that she had just left, and he notes that this was a very strange interaction, as for the entire 2 years that he knew her as the nanny for the Crims, she never had uttered a word to him in the elevator. On the way up to the apartment, a neighbor recalls seeing the children with their nanny, and the neighbor says to the young girl that the young girl was in high spirits, dancing around and excitedly telling her that she'll be going to dance later. Now remember, they had 3 kids, and 2 of the kids are with the nanny, and the nanny is taking them up to the room. And the 2 kids that she was taking care of were 6 and 2 at the time of this incident. 20 minutes go by later that the mom goes to the place to pick up her daughter and her son, and they're not there. So she kind of like gets upset, and she goes home because she's thinking, well, maybe they went home. She starts texting Yoseline, and Yoseline doesn't text back. She says to the doorman if he knows where they're at, and the doorman says, "Oh yeah, I saw them a while ago and they went upstairs." She goes into her apartment. She says that it's very quiet, and she looks around and she sees the stroller for the baby, and she doesn't see any of the lights on or anything. She goes into the bathroom and she turns on the light. As she turns on the light in the bathroom, she sees her 2 children in the bathtub, covered with blood. They had been stabbed over and over and over again, and their throats had been slit. She screams, but the minute before she screams, she opens the door, she sees the kids, she looks at Yoseline. Yoseline looks at her. Yoseline stabs herself in the throat so severely that she breaks 2 bones in her neck. Now, after the superintendent hears the mother screaming and runs out of the building with her daughter, the doorman calls 911, and the superintendent rushes up to the apartment to see what's going on. That's when he goes into the bathroom and sees... Well, let me give you what he says. He says, and I quote, "Ortega was staring into the bathroom mirror. Blood was pouring from her gash in her throat, and I could see the tub, and I could see, I would say, bodies or clothing or something. I couldn't bear to look at the bodies. All I could see was blood. I did my best to not take my eyes off of Miss Ortega. When she turned to look at me, she had eyes of the devil." End quote. So after she turned and looked at him, he ran out of the apartment, and he slammed the door shut behind him from the hallway. He barricaded it and held it tightly closed until police arrived. The first responding officer, now listen to this too. The superintendent, this is the officer speaking, so I quote, "The superintendent holding the door says his face was white. He was sweating, and he was holding the door shut with his 2 hands and his foot. He said to me, whatever is behind that door is pure evil." We will be right back after a word from our sponsors. And now it's time for the Uber shout out of the week. And this week I have 2. First one is Helis and her dog Mila. She's a veterinarian. I went and picked her up, and she brought the dog in with her. And I am usually afraid of big dogs, She had a big German Shepherd who was still a puppy, but he was huge. And I was driving, and it took me kind of far, but I didn't even know the dog was there. Such a good dog. But she is a veterinarian right on the outskirts of San Antonio off of 35, going towards New Braunfels. So if you have pets in San Antonio or in San Marcos or New Braunfels, call Hellas. She'll take care of you. Okay, the other one is Amanda. So this poor girl, very beautiful girl, she was at the gas station. I went to go put gas in my car, and I actually stopped to talk to her because she had a sticker of her business, which was doing nails. And so I decided to see if she could tell me where to get the sticker for my podcast. That way I could put it on the car. Luckily, she didn't freak out, and I started talking to her about the podcast. And it was, I owe her a shout out because, to be honest with you, I probably scared the hell out of her. And it wasn't really a good meet. So this is Amanda's shout out. And I told her that I would give her business a little shout out too. So if you're in the San Antonio area, look her up on Instagram under Sets, SETS, by BY, Nana, NANA _. Sets by Nana. And she does nails and things like that. So if you guys are in the area and you want to look her up, get your nails done, ladies, maybe even guys. She told me guys do it too. So here's your shout out. And all right, let's get back to the show. And welcome back to The Demon Inside. Behind that door is pure evil, end quote. That's what the officer said. So they ended up taking out their guns, and they went in and cleared the house, and then they went into the bathroom last. And when they entered the bathroom, they saw the kids that were deceased, and they were sitting in the tub facing forward with their eyes open. Yoseline was on the ground, and she was breathing very lightly, but she was observing them as they were trying to take the kids out. The wounds in the neck were so deep that the officers were scared to pick up the kids because they actually could have fallen off. That's how deep these cuts were. Yoseline silently laid there and watched the movement of all the police officers. And they end up taking her to the hospital. She actually recovers. She doesn't remember anything that happened. Basically, they have to tell her what happened because she needs a defense now. Her whole defense from the lawyers was an insanity plea, of course. But they also said that she was upset because she wasn't making enough money and she needed money and the people were going to fire her soon. And this was like a type of revenge. Now, my question is this. Yes, it could have been revenge. She could have killed the kids to get revenge on the mom. But she loved those kids. She loved those kids. She wouldn't go her whole life, get this job, wait 2 years, and then kill these kids because it wouldn't make sense. She would have killed, if it was for revenge, she would have killed the husband and the wife. She wouldn't have killed the kids. And if she was going to kill the kids for revenge, she would have killed all three. Not just two. She would have killed all three. I believe she was possessed by this time. And this demon took these kids, these little lights of hope, these children who are pure, took them upstairs into that room, into that bathroom, killed them, waited for the mom to come. He saw her, she saw him, she saw the demon, and then this demon stabbed Yoseline in the throat. He was trying to kill her as well. How many times have we heard about a parent killing their kids and then trying to take their own life? I did an episode on the first season. There was a few of them. Claudia Nadia Rodriguez was one. Audie Sanchez was another. There's a lot of them that they stabbed their kids and they tried to kill themselves right after. So now what I'm going to do is tell you why I believe that Yoseline Ortega was possessed fully. So let me tell you this. There's 4 degrees to demonic possession. And I'm going to go step by step. Now remember, possessions don't happen overnight. They happen over a period of time. It's like a process. And they have to be invited first. Whether it's in the home or whether it's in them, they can't just go into your house. You have to invite them in. That's why I believe when her sister passed away, she was either doing a Ouija board or she was doing a seance or just wishing that her sister could talk to her, and this demon unfortunately was there. So these four degrees to demonic possession is actually it's in a book called An Exorcist Tells His Story, which was in 1990, and it's by Father Gabriel Amorth. He was the chief exorcist in Rome. And here's the stages, okay? And we're going to go through this. Infestation. This is haunted house type stuff. Footsteps, voices, apparitions, furniture, or other objects moving without human agency. Orders with no discernible sources. Rather than directly affecting people, infestations affect only property, objects, or even animals. So it's your basic haunting of a house. Now, she was saying that she was seeing stuff. She didn't say that there was chairs moving or any of that, but I mean, she pretty much invited them in, so they didn't have to do an infestation. So then the next one is oppression. Now, oppression is activity, steps up with physical attacks. Sleep disturbances. Remember, she was having insomnia, including regular nightmares, frequent and severe illnesses, major depression, which she had, or anxiety, severe financial or employment problems, which she was having, and relationship troubles, which she didn't even have a relationship. And her relationship with her son was very strained because she would leave him in the Dominican Republic. While these things happen in the normal course of life, all of them happening at once or in rapid succession could be a sign of demonic presence. Now we have obsession, okay? As the name implies, at this stage, the afflicted person has a hard time functioning, being constantly preoccupied with thoughts of the demonic activity, commandeering his or her life, and frequently with thoughts of suicide as well. Sleep becomes nearly impossible. Again, she had insomnia. Now, obsession could also be her going over and over and over again that she is broke, she has no money, she can't support her son, she can't, and this is obsessing over and over and over again about money and trying to take care of her son. Now the fourth is possession, and possession is very rare, guys, honestly. And you're not going to see it like in the movies where they spit green or They're floating in the air, stuff like that. Possession is not demons entering a person's body and taking over his or her soul. A person's free will is never removed, only severely compromised. In possession, a person is so physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually broken down by going through the other 3 stages that demonic spirits are able to seize occasional control over that person's actions. Now, this goes back to everything that I've been talking to. For one moment, this demon could take over, and it's in that moment where this demon kills, and then it goes back to the person. So here are the telltale signs of possession, including, and not limited to, superhuman strength, speaking in a language the victim doesn't know, inordinate aversion to holy objects, knowledge of events or facts the victim could not possibly know. And according to the Diocese of San Jose exorcist Gary Thomas, who wrote the book The Rite, he says changes in facial features. So I ask you, is this the same demon or is it a different demon? These killings of children in twos, I believe this is a demon that enjoys killing kids and then killing the host that he is in, and do the same thing over and over again. Thanks for listening, guys.
Don't forget to subscribe to the Demon Inside podcast on any podcast platform. A new episode of the Demon Inside will be released every week. Let us know what you think of the episode on all our social media platforms. If you have any questions or comments, go to the Demon Inside podcast at gmail.com or click on the link down below. We would love to hear from you. And to become a Demon Insider, go to our website, thedemoninsidepodcast.com. We thank you for listening and hope you will join us next week for a new Demon Inside podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please tell your friends. I am John Venom, and I'll see you next time, if I don't get possessed. The Demon Inside was written and created by James Porter. It is a production of Venomous Entertainment. Background music is by Lucas King. And the title song, Demon Inside, was produced by Rice Prober, composer lyricist Peter Shelley, and performed by Conjure One.